Imagine becoming one of the greatest running backs in the NFL, winning a Super Bowl, and then winning another one, winning Super Bowl MVP, winning an NFL MVP, and then at just 26 years old rushing for over 2,000 yards in a single season. You probably assume that the rest of your career would be pretty historic. You might even start wondering how high you can climb in the all-time rushing list. But for Terrell Davis, that's just not what happened. Because almost immediately after reaching the absolute peak of his career, everything fell apart. And I'm not talking about a player suddenly becoming bad. And I'm not talking about a player losing his starting job. I'm not talking about a player who failed to live up to expectations. I'm talking about one of the greatest 4-year stretches we've ever seen from an NFL running back, being followed by one of the most dramatic career collapses we've ever seen. From 1995 through 1998, Terrell Davis rushed for 6,413 yards and 56 touchdowns. That's more than 1,600 rushing yards per season. He won Offensive Player of the Year, he won NFL MVP and won 2 Super Bowls. He won Super Bowl MVP, and then over the final 3 seasons of his career, he played only 17 games. So, what happened? To understand Terrell Davis' career, we have to go way back before the Denver Broncos, because his journey to the NFL wasn't exactly normal. Davis was born and raised in San Diego, California, and unlike some of the players we talked about on this channel, he wasn't some nationally famous 5-star recruit coming out of high school. The road to the NFL was much more complicated. Davis eventually made his way to Long Beach State, where he joined the football program. And one of the people that actually made that happen was his brother, Reggie Webb. His brother helped persuade the school and give Terrell an opportunity, but Davis wasn't immediately a star. He redshirted his first year. Then eventually he was finally given the opportunity to play, and then another major problem hit the program. Long Beach State had hired legendary coach George Allen, but Coach Allen passed away before Davis ever got a chance to play in his first game. Then Davis finally saw the field in 1991, where in which he only played in 5 games, but in those 5 games he rushed for 262 yards on 55 carries, which is 4.8 yards per carry. It wasn't enough to make him a national star, but Davis was finally getting some real college experience. And then the entire situation changed again. In December 1991, Long Beach State had decided to drop its football program because of financial problems, and the entire program was gone. So think about what that means for a young player. You finally get onto the field and you start figuring out college football, and then your school doesn't have a football team anymore. Then Davis had no choice. He had to transfer. And that's how he ended up at University of Georgia. And Georgia was a completely different level of football. This was the SEC, and Davis wasn't immediately the starter there either. In 1992, he was mostly a backup to an All-American running back in Garrison Hearst. And Hearst was already one of the best running backs in the country, so Davis had to wait again. But when he got opportunities, he made them count. Davis rushed for 388 yards during the 1992 season, and that was only just the beginning. Then Garrison Hearst left for the NFL, and suddenly Terrell Davis had his opportunity. In 1993, Davis became Georgia's leading rusher. He carried the ball 167 times for 824 yards, and he had 5 touchdowns to boot. He averaged 4.9 yards per carry, and had one game against Arkansas where he rushed for 177 yards. And this was the first time Davis really began looking like an NFL prospect, but he still wasn't viewed as some can't-miss player. His college career had been interrupted. He had transferred and dealt with injuries, and his senior season was about to make the evaluation even more complicated. Davis entered his senior season, hoping to establish himself as a legitimate NFL prospect, but early in the season he suffered a hamstring injury. That injury limited him and caused him to miss time. He finished the season with just 445 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. And if you're an NFL scout looking at that resume, you might have some questions. Here's some running back that showed some flashes. He had produced in the SEC, but his senior season was limited. His career numbers weren't so spectacular, and he had an injury history, but something changed toward the end of that season. Davis later explained it was a moment he had realized he wasn't giving football everything he had. With only 4 games left in his college career, he decided he was going to completely commit himself to football. He finished with 113 yards against Auburn and 121 against Georgia Tech. Those games weren't just enough to make him a first-round prospect, but it showed NFL teams that there was still something there. Then came the NFL draft. Davis waited and waited and waited. The first round came and went. The second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and finally the 6th round. The Denver Broncos selected Terrell Davis with the 196th overall pick. Davis wasn't drafted to become a franchise running back. He wasn't even guaranteed to make the team. He was a 6th round pick with inconsistent resume and injury concerns. And that's exactly what makes the next part of the story so crazy. Davis had finally arrived in Denver and immediately found himself buried on the depth chart. He was essentially the 6th running back on the roster. He wasn't getting many opportunities, and during Denver's preseason game in Japan, Davis became so frustrated with his situation that he actually considered leaving the team. He was sitting on the sideline watching other players get opportunities, and he didn't think the Broncos were going to keep him. He reportedly even tried to figure out how to get back home, but couldn't exactly figure out how to leave Tokyo. So instead, he stayed. Then, Denver gave him an opportunity on special teams, and Davis got onto the field, and he absolutely exploded into the returner. It was a huge hit. and sadly coaches and teammates were looking at the 6th-round pick differently. Broncos quarterback John Elway later described Davis as an example player who was buried deep on the depth chart until he finally got his opportunity, and that one play opened people's eyes. And Davis began climbing the depth chart. Number 6 became number 5, then 4, then 3, and eventually number 1. The 6th-round pick had gone from fighting to stay on the roster to becoming Denver's starting running back. And he did. Davis started 14 games as a rookie. He carried the ball 237 times for 1,117 yards and 7 touchdowns. He averaged 4.7 yards per carry. And he wasn't just a runner, he caught 49 passes for 367 yards and a touchdown. He became the lowest drafted running back at the time to rush for more than 1,000 yards as a rookie. And the craziest part is he actually missed Denver's final 2 games because of a hamstring injury. So he did all of that in just 14 games. The 6th-round pick had officially arrived, and nobody knew how good he was about to become. In 1996, Davis took another massive steps. He played all 16 games and had 345 carries for 1,500 rushing yards. He had 13 rushing touchdowns, which is 4.5 yards per carry. He also added 310 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Davis wasn't simply putting up good numbers, he was now one of the best running backs in the NFL. He was named the NFL's Offensive Player of the Year. And Denver's offense was becoming the most dangerous in football, but 1996 was still only the beginning. In 1997, Davis became a centerpiece of a championship team. He rushed for 1,700 yards and had 15 touchdowns, which led the NFL. He averaged 4.7 yards per carry, and Denver went 12-4. And then the playoffs began. This is where Terrell Davis has separated himself from almost every other running back in football. Against Jacksonville in the wild card, he had 184 rushing yards. Against Kansas City, 101 yards. Against Pittsburgh in the AFC Championship game, he had 139 yards. And in just 3 playoff games, he had 424 rushing yards, and Denver was going to the Super Bowl. Denver was facing the Green Bay Packers. The Packers had Brett Favre, but Denver had never won a Super Bowl. The Broncos needed their running game to carry them, and Terrell Davis delivered one of the greatest Super Bowl performances by a running back ever. He rushed for 157 yards and scored 3 touchdowns. Denver won 31-24, and Terrell Davis was named Super Bowl MVP. And in 1998, and somehow Terrell Davis got even better. 1998 was the season that transformed him from an incredible running back to an NFL legend. Denver started the season 14-2, and Davis was the engine. He rushed for 2,008 yards and scored 21 rushing touchdowns, which is 5.1 yards per carry. He did that on 392 carries. He became only the 4th player in NFL history to rush for 2,000 yards in one season. And he wasn't barely getting there. He broke the 2,000-yard barrier by 8 yards. He also led the league in rushing touchdowns. Davis became one of the most dominant players in NFL history. And the way he started the season makes the 2,000-yard number even crazier. Through 7 games, Davis had already rushed for 1,001 yards. That's an average of 142 rushing yards per game. Only Jim Brown, O.J. Simpson, and Terrell Davis had rushed for 1,000 rushing yards through 7 games at the time. He produced the entire elite running back season before most teams reached the halfway point in the season. And he kept going and finished with 2,000 yards and the NFL MVP. And Davis went back to the Super Bowl. He was pretty much impossible to stop in the playoffs. He dominated in 1997 and continued that in 1998. He rushed for 199 yards against Miami in the divisional round, then 167 yards against the Jets in the AFC Championship game, and Davis rushed 102 yards against Atlanta in the Super Bowl. Davis had 7 consecutive playoff games with at least 100 rushing yards, which is still an NFL playoff record. And Denver had won his 2nd consecutive Super Bowl. Terrell Davis had now won 2 championships. He won a Super Bowl MVP and he had won NFL MVP. He rushed for 2,000 yards. He established himself as arguably the best running back in football, and he was only 26 years old. At this point, nobody was wondering if Terrell Davis was great. He clearly was. The question was how high his career could eventually climb. He already accumulated for 6,413 rushing yards in 4 seasons. He had 56 rushing touchdowns in 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and he had improved his rushing total for every season. And it looked like his career was just beginning. But then came 1999. Terrell Davis had entered the 1999 season as the reigning NFL MVP. He was only 26 years old. He was coming off a 2,000-yard season just had winning his 2nd Super Bowl. Then in week 4 against the New York Jets, his career changed forever. The Broncos threw an interception and Davis tried to make a tackle. While making the tackle, he suffered a devastating injury to his right knee. ACL, MCL, his season was over. He had only played 4 games that season. The reigning MVP finished 1999 with just 211 rushing yards. And here's what makes the story even more poetic. Remember that tackle in Tokyo? The one that helped convince Denver to keep him? The tackle that helped launch his NFL career? Terrell Davis' career was ultimately cut short while he was trying to make another tackle. Davis himself described that as irony. His career started with a tackle and ended trying to make a tackle. But in 2000, Davis wasn't ready to walk away. He wanted to come back. He worked his way through rehab and returned for the 2000 season. But the player who returned wasn't the same physically dominant running back we seen in 1998. Davis played in only 5 games and carried the ball 78 times for 282 yards. That's only 3.6 yards per carry. And once again, injuries limited him. The Broncos wasn't getting their MVP back. They were getting a player desperately trying to get his body back. And in 2001, Davis tried again. This time he appeared in only 8 games. He carried the ball 167 times for 701 yards. His average improved to 4.2 yards per carry. And honestly, that part still matters because after his body went through all that, he could still run. He wasn't completely finished as a football player, but his body couldn't give him a full season. And for the first time in his NFL career, he didn't score a rushing touchdown in 8 games. He had 701 yards, but 0 rushing touchdowns. And that will be the final season of Terrell Davis' career. From 1995 through 1998, he had 6,413 rushing yards for 56 touchdowns, 4 consecutive seasons with 1,000 yards, an average of 1,600 rushing yards per season. And from 1999 to 2001, he played 17 games with only 1,194 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. That's not a normal decline. That's not a player just slowly getting older. That's not a running back losing his explosiveness. That's a career being ripped apart by an injury. And the timing makes it even more devastating. Because Davis wasn't in his 30s, he was 26 years old when the injury happened. He was supposed to have years left in his career. Eventually, Terrell Davis' career is recognized for where it really was. Definitely not a failed or incomplete career. An incredibly dominant career that was cut short. And in 2017, he was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. If you look at his resume, it's pretty hard to argue against it. In just 7 years, he played 78 games. He had 7,600 rushing yards, 60 rushing touchdowns, and 169 receptions, with 1,280 receiving yards, 3 Pro Bowls and 3 first-team All-Pro selections, an NFL MVP and 2-time Super Bowl champion, NFL All-Decade Team and a Hall of Famer. And that's what I think makes the story of Terrell Davis so fascinating. His career didn't end because he wasn't good enough. It didn't end because he lost his starting job. It didn't end because another running back passed him on a depth chart. His body just simply couldn't keep up with the career he was building. A 6th-round pick who almost quit on football became an NFL MVP, and that MVP became a 2-time Super Bowl champion. And that Super Bowl champion became a 2,000-yard rusher. And then almost immediately after reaching the highest point possible, his career collapsed. And he retired before he turned 30. But still, somehow, even after losing so much in his career due to injury, he still made the Hall of Fame. And maybe that's the best way to remember Terrell Davis. Not as the running back whose career fell apart, but as a running back who accomplished an impossible feat that his body wouldn't let him do anymore. We can argue who was the greatest running back in NFL history, but we can't argue he had the greatest 4-year stretch by a running back in NFL history.